It's a wrap. Our next jewelry making workshop today on Beads, Baubles and Jewels.
Beads, Baubles and Jewels has been brought to you in part by Beading Daily, your jewelry making resource for how-to projects, books, magazines, DVDs, events, and online learning. BeadingDaily.com. Beadalon, a manufacturer of flexible bead stringing wires, memory wire, artistic wire, stringing materials, innovative findings, and tools to help you fashion your own jewelry. Beadalon.com. Dreamtime Creations, an online supplier of crystals, findings, and jewelry making supplies since 1989. DreamtimeCreations.com. Halcraft, jewelry component manufacturer. Halcraft.com.
Hi, I'm Katie Hacker, your host, and we continue our workshop of jewelry making techniques this season with It's a Wrap. These are necklaces and bracelets that wrap, coil, and twist for texture and interest. Christie Friesen is our first guest in a segment we filmed earlier. Make a beautiful orchid from polymer clay featuring a technique for twisting colors together. Then, Mary Hettmansperger has a metalwork project featuring embossing on metal for an interesting and unique surface on low-tech metal jewelry. It's not just for scrapbooking. Next is Jewelry Making Workshop and how to use memory wire, including the flat style. And finally, Laura Timmons of Dreamtime Creations is back with a braided leather bracelet using cup chain. Christie is up first. I'm here with polymer clay artist Christie Friesen. Welcome, Christie.
Hi, Katie.
So
thanks.
happy to have you. And let's take a look at this bracelet. This is beautiful.
It's great fun.
And it's super durable, right?
It is, actually. You probably don't want to go bonking people on the head with it, but beyond that, it is very, very wearable.
All right. So how do you get started? Because this is simple techniques, or advanced technique, but simple to put together?
It's actually both. So, you know, it looks complicated, but it really is quite simple.
Oh, my favorite.
So, yeah. And polymer clay is such a simple medium to work with anyway. So on this one, we're going to have fun with chaos. Are you ready for that?
Ready.
Great, chaos it is. I've got 3 colors of green, and all I'm going to do is run them through the pasta machine. Nothing really dramatic. It's very soft clay, so minimal of conditioning.
And you just sliced off the ends of your
Yep, just
clay.
ran it right through. And as you can tell, that makes a nice flat sheet. All I'm going to do is fold it and rip it and stick it right back through again. No rhyme or reason, which is always fun. And you do this a couple different times. You keep rolling and folding until you've got a stack that's got all kinds of layers to it. And then when you use your cutting blade to cut that open, you'll see what a fun little mix of things is in there. Striations, baby. And really, it's a great way to get out any of the day's frustrations. So once you've made this little mix of striations, we're going to take a cutting blade. Remember, sharp end away from your arteries, and just slice that right down. And you've got, oops, cutting the other one here. Good. We'll do that later. Then you've got a nice little chunk here of striations, and I just laid these down in a nice long row. You can see what I've got there. Overlapping, again, no rhyme or reason, just smashing it through. Then you get to put this through the pasta machine. Once you run that through the pasta machine, you have a very long, narrow, skinny, flattened striation, as you can tell. I just ripped this in half and put one half on top of the other. And it's that simple. Then when you run that through the pasta machine, you get a nice, long, flattened piece, right? And then you're just going to use this blank metal cuff. And I've pre-ripped this so it's about the right size, but the way you measure is you just take your cuff and you kind of roll it over the surface. Very precise rolling. Rip off the end. And then this is the tricky part. Instead of just rolling it on the outside and having all that gap on the inside where it's going to be rough on your wrist, I've actually wants to put this on the inside and roll it from the inside out. So you're just going to kind of open this up, press it in place. It looks harder than it is. It just kind of pushes against the metal, grabs to the metal nicely. Try to make sure it's kind of even in there, but don't sweat it. Flap over those ends. So see, now it's grabbing there, and all you need to do from that point is just start pushing this over this way. Don't worry about rips. It all heals itself very nicely, and you just keep going all the way around. And with any luck, you end up with a nicely
So you just keep mushing it together.
Keep mushing and mushing. And when you get to those ends, in fact, let's move that mush out of the way. When you get to those ends, you're just going to pinch and pull. And I've kind of made them look sort of like leaf ends there.
Yes, you have.
Doesn't that look nice?
Yes, it does.
It's like I know what I'm doing, huh?
Yes.
All right, so once you've got that, you're ready for the orchid. That's super duper simple. You're going to do the same chaotic blend here. So I've got this little bit of clay here, and any colors that amuse you. Orchids are everything. So whatever color you like to use, I've just used some pinks and purples. And I've done the same thing, run it through the pasta machine, rip it, stack it, that kind of thing. And again, when you cut it open,
looks so pretty.
See, I've got all those little nice slices. And again, no rhyme and reason, so every one can be different. And chop it up with your cutting blade until you have just a little piece of it. And you can kind of see that this is already sort of petal shaped. So what I'm doing is touching it all over, fingerprints of your friend, and you're going to pull until you sort of form this into this petal shape. Then I'm going to take this same clay, the same style clay, but now I'm just using white and pink, just using some colors in here, but not quite as dramatic, doing the ripping and cutting, and then when you cut it open, you see you've got a nice, softer blend.
Yeah.
And when you make, again, the same sort of petals from there, you see how the two complement each other, but there's some contrast there. Now there's a little trick with that main flower on the bottom, main petal on the bottom. It's a little bit bigger, a little bit more showy. You know, it's an orchid thing. So I'm going to take this thicker one and I'm going to push it so that I've got a bit of a teardrop shape here instead of my pointy leaf look. And get my thumb in there and I'm going to make this into a spoon, like the kind you'd eat Chinese soup with. So just like a nice curved business with your fingers there. And then you just pinch it a little bit so you get a little bit of ruffle on there. And so you get real orchid look. So that, now you've got all your pieces. That will be the last bit we need to make the cuff come together. So you've got your wrapped cuff, you got all these petals. Let's put them together. I've got the orchid kind of in the center of the cuff, but you don't want it dead center because that's kind of boring. You always want to be a little off kilter. So I'm going to put the first one there, and then I'm going to match these other colors here. So I've got the main color, then those two auxiliary colors.
It really gives it a lot of dimension, too.
Doesn't it? And all those blends and things are just such
so
fun.
Good.
Now we've got the third one here, or the fourth one, if I can count. And you notice how I'm kind of going over the edge of the cuff like that? When you have things off over the edge, then that's going to be a little bit more likely to get bonked around. So I'm actually going to bend that a bit so it's a bit more durable because you've got the cuff kind of giving it some strength.
So bring it more in line a little bit.
And so this is what I've got, so that I've got 3 and 3.
That looks
just like
great.
That. Isn't that great fun?
Yes.
And there's 2 other little tricks now. This by itself, of course, awesome. But, you know, more awesome, more better. So we're going to take this and just twist it a little bit. A lot of orchids have that twisty thing going on. That's how you can tell they're showy. So we've got that little bit there. So again, a bit more orchidy. And then I'm just going to use a stick pearl with a head pin in it. And I think I've got one already made up. It's probably wandered. There it is. So we've got just a little stick pearl. I've put a silver head pin with a little ball on the tip. And you notice how I've made a little hook in the end.
Yes.
The hook lets it embed into the clay so that after it's baked, it's locked in there and it won't come out.
Good.
And you just stick that right in the center. Obviously, you don't want to go straight down because you run into metal bracelet and that's silly. So just kind of put it on an angle, press that in, and voila, baby.
And there you
Ready
go.
to rock and roll.
Now, do you need to do anything special when you bake this?
Actually, that's a great question. And if you put this in the oven just like this and you lay it down on your flat surface, it's going to get shiny or whatever else. So you make a nice little nest out of toilet paper. And you just tuck this in its little toilet paper nest. You can put some toilet paper in the cuff here to keep it from bobbling around. Pop it right in the oven. You won't have any trouble. Unless you've got toilet paper up into all the elements, you're not going to have any problem with any kind of danger of burning. So
yeah. So then you put the toilet paper nest with the bracelet in it on a tray, right?
Exactly.
And then put it in the oven.
Put it in the oven and let it bake according to manufacturer's instructions, and you are good to go.
Oh, it's so pretty, and I love the dimensionality, and it looks painted.
It really does, doesn't it?
You can use the colors of the clay for that.
And you can
really
match one with every outfit.
I love it. Thank you so much,
You're
Christy.
welcome.
We will be right back. I'm here with author and artist Mary Hettmansperger. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you.
And today we're talking about coiling and wrapping, and you have a great idea for embossing metal.
Yes, I actually have come up with sort of an alternative way to get color on metal, and I do a lot of torch fire enameling, but this is a real flexible and fun alternative way to use your stamps, like in scrapbooking, so it's quite fun.
I love the crossover. So how do you get started?
Okay, well the first thing you really need to do is get your metal ready, because if you just take a bare piece of metal, and this is I'm doing this on copper, and the copper, it's so clean and shiny that you would run the risk of it just flaking off. So you do need to prepare your metal, and whether it be like a 24 gauge, which is what I use for my heavier metal pieces, or a copper foil, basically what I do is I take it to my propane torch. And I'll either get fire scale or I will turn around and use gel flux, and gel flux will create a red color on your metal.
And do you just brush it on?
You just
and
brush
then
it on.
Light it with the torch?
And if you can see here, I actually have used a stamp, so I can actually use the gel flux with the stamps and get a pattern. But once I get my metal prepared, then I'm ready to do the enameling, or the embossing, sorry. And so this is what you do. Basically, you use the embossing ink, and you can use any pad or any stamp. And then just press it down.
And I bet that works especially great with stamps that have a really defined line.
Oh, it does. It really does. And then I try to pick something that, some sort of powder that's going to be really quite, you know, distinct.
Ooh, I love that color.
Yeah, it's nice. And then I just take this and
Pour it back
pour
in.
it back in. And you can see it's very nice.
That looks great.
And what you can do, you have really two choices. You can go in first and hit it with your embossing gun, which is what I'm going to do. Or
That
you can
just holds it in
actually,
place before
yeah,
you do the torch.
or you can actually do it with the torch right away. But what happens is if you hit it with the torch, sometimes it'll just push the powder right off. So now you can see it getting shiny. Now this alone is really nice to use as just a layer in a piece. And remember, it's metal, so it sometimes is a little bit hotter than the paper would be. This is nice, especially if it, just like this, if you wanted to use it under mica, that protects it.
And it looks great.
And it looks great. But what I do is I take it one step further. And I take it and make sure you use safety glasses, make sure you've got good pliers to hold it.
Okay.
And I'm not going to show you, but basically you turn your torch on and literally you just kind of run it through. And what'll happen is you'll see it start to smoke. And it really kind of encrusts it into the surface, and you can kind of choose how far you want to push it.
All right, and you have a couple of samples here
Yeah,
that really show the difference.
It
between
really
one that's
does.
been-
And you can even get it to the point where it even sort of is melting or bubbling up. You can also have it where it actually will burn. So it's really quite fun to see. And you can mix your powders and all that.
Yeah,
which
and I
is
love
great.
the way that you use kind of the natural colors.
Yeah,
With
I like
the
I-
patina of the metal.
yeah,
It looks really
what
pretty
really
together.
looks good with the metal.
Yeah, and so these are some pieces that where you layered it with other.
Right, and what's great about the embossing as opposed to like enameling is that you have a lot of flexibility. So I don't have to pre-think. I can come right in here. Now I have this great piece. I can cut into it. I can use my coil connections, and I can even bend it. On this piece here, as you can see, I even took it after I put the embossing on it, taken my pliers, manipulated the metal, moved it, and then I've got a great surface still.
And you don't have to worry about this flaking off or cracking.
Especially when you hit it with the torch. I mean, that's sort of the key. Now, on this here, it would be fine if it's just, you know, it hadn't been hit with the torch, but I always like to hit it
because
with the
you
torch.
didn't bend it. Yeah, these are beautiful.
And it's really great as an inside layer. What's great, and let me show you how we set it up here.
Okay.
The mica, if you're using the thinner copper, what's really nice is you can actually cut this, the mica, with scissors. You have to be careful what kind of mica you use, but if you use a really nice thin layer. So what you can do is you can put it behind the mica. If it's sort of the main event on the top, again, what's great is you can just cut into it. And that's something you just can't do with, you just cannot do with the enameling, yeah. And even you can come back in, and if you need to hammer off your edges to smooth them off, you can still come back in and hammer. I usually try to hammer before. You know, if I'm going to make any kind of texture, I'll do that
Before
prior
you
to
do the embossing.
Embossing, totally.
Now, you mentioned the sharp edges. Would you also file them down?
You
or
can
just
file them,
hammer
you
a
can
little
use
bit?
steel wool, but I actually use these scissors a lot. And I always tell people to keep your scissors kind of at that 12 o'clock position and then just move your metal around.
And you can also use the hole punch with this, right?
Totally, and that's the best part. It's like, you know, when you're dealing with your enameling, you have to really pre-think all of your designs. So when I was thinking about a layering process, you know, I might want to come in and, you know, layer these like this. The embossing can become like a secondary, you know, a secondary.
It's really an element.
Yeah, element, or it can become the main event. And what I try to do is I try to use either the eyelets or the brads, or I use nails, I use nuts and bolts, and all of these little things come in really handy, which are just some little disc
You can
scrapers,
do cold
metal.
connections that
right,
way.
Right. And one other thing I use a lot of is the brads. The brads are really nice because if I'm trying to connect something, like if I'm going to connect this top to this one, and I don't want a space, I can literally come in with my hole punch, and I make all my holes on the surface first. Then I use this as sort of a pattern,
template.
like a template. And what's real nice, about this is then I come in. The brad has a tendency to look like a full-on rivet.
Yeah, and then they're permanently
And then
together.
they're permanent.
Looks great.
But then I would take this back side and then connect it and create my space.
That's a great way to bring texture into your designs.
It is. And you
Yeah.
can hammer those
Let's take a
brads, which is really nice.
Oh yeah, give them some more texture. Let's take a look at your finished pieces here. So
Well-
that's an idea of using the transparency
Right,
over.
right. And that's what I've done on this piece. And all my embossing on this one is just with the lettering in the back side. The front side of this one is sort of the main event. I've used a real detailed stamp just to give it some interesting texture.
Oh yeah, they look beautiful, and especially bringing in a little bit of color, I think,
Yeah.
is a great way to add texture too.
It's a great, easy technique. It's out of my latest book, and I find it really fun to play with.
Yeah, let's just take one look at these real quickly, and I especially want to show this one in the middle.
Well,
that has-
and like I said, you can punch the holes in after the fact over the embossing, and I've done stitching on that. And even all of that, I've gone through it. It'll still hold up.
Oh, what a great technique. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Mary. And I will be right back. Today's jewelry making workshop is about using memory wire in your jewelry designs. Memory wire is a stainless steel coil, so it looks like this. And you'll want to use a special cutter with it. Always use memory wire shears to cut this because it is tempered. It will leave a little notch in your regular cutters. So use your shears to trim off those coils. Now, you'll notice there are different shapes. It comes in preformed sizes, so you need to choose the one that you'll use because you can't really alter it. There's a circle, there's oval, there are necklace and ring sizes as well. And if you take a look at these, you'll see that this one is made from round wire and this one is made from flat wire, which makes it really perfect for wire wrapping. And I'll show you some ideas for that in a sec. So to get started, after you cut it, what you'll want to do is think about how you're going to finish it. And the easiest beginner way is to use round nose pliers and just roll the end back. Now, I always roll the end away from the natural curve of the wire. Because it is tempered steel, it's easier to bend against that natural curve, unlike with other types of shaping wire. If you wanted to add beads to this, just keep in mind that you should work with it in the coil instead of trying to pull the end straight out. It will always remember its shape, but it does have a little bit of a sharp end and your beads can go flying if you let go. So keep it in that coil shape and just thread your beads onto the wire. Now, if you're using flat wire, you'll still want to maintain the coil, but you can do some wire wrapping onto the surface of it. So it gives you some different design options. And I really like it with between 4 and 6 millimeter beads. If you separate out your end, again, you can just roll the end back with the round nose pliers, and then you can coil directly onto it. So hold your bead against the flat part of the wire, and then coil your shaping wire around, and that will hold it in place. And you can do that to cover the surface of the entire bracelet if you want to. Now, there are a couple of other ways to finish the ends, and one is a set screw style finding. So it has a covered end on one side and a hole on the other side so that you can slide it onto the end of your memory wire. You'll just use your miniature screwdriver then to fasten it into place. And if you want that to be absolutely permanent, you can add a little drop of glue. Now, there are also glue-on ends, and these are a half-drilled bead that give you also a really nice professional finish. You would rough up the end with an emery board or piece of sandpaper, and then add a little bit of glue, or you could use epoxy, and then press your end cap onto the end of the wire. These come in a couple of different sizes, and both of these give it a really nice finished look. Now, if you take a look at the coiled bracelet here, this is using flat memory wire. So I actually just wired the beads on by coiling it around the coil itself. So it's double coil, I guess. And then these are rings, but you could also use them as wine charms, and you could have your guests pick their favorite color. This one is a bangle bracelet that I created using looped ends. So they're just fastened to each other. You want to measure this so that it fits over the widest part of your hand. Then this piece is a bracelet that you can see it's a coiled wraparound piece. Just like that, maintains the spring. This one is a cuff bracelet that's heavier, so I added clasps here to the ends to make sure that it stays on nice and tight. And these are just some more ideas for using memory wire in your jewelry designs. I'm here with artist and designer Laura Timmons from Dreamtime Creations. Welcome,
Yes,
Laura.
hi, thank you. Thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. It's great. Today we're talking about wrap jewelry.
Right.
And you have a great idea for an easy necklace or bracelet.
Absolutely, and I love jewelry with versatility, so this can be worn both as a bracelet and a necklace, but I love kind of the hippie chic look of it too. I call this my Wrapalicious leather bracelet, and we're using this fabulous cup chain.
It's so beautiful, and you could use any size.
You can. In fact, I've got some smaller versions here, and they're basically crystal chatons connected by little metal cups. And what's great about this, of course, you can cut it any length that you want. It has these little tiny metal connectors in between. So I'm just going to measure out the length that I want, and I'm just going to cut those little connectors out. Just that easy.
Really simple. So you can just use any kind of wire cutter to trim that.
Yeah, I mean, these are just basic cutters, and because it's a really thin metal, so very easy to cut out those little connectors. Now, for the bracelet, what we're going to do is we're going to start out with somewhere around 20 to 25 inches of the cup chain.
Okay.
And then I always start out with about 2 strips of 1 yard each of materials. Today we're using leather, and very, very simple. In fact, I love instant gratification projects.
Me too.
And this definitely is.
And it definitely looks
So-
more complicated. So.
Well, it does. It does. I think anytime you kind of give a project a braiding effect, it looks a little more
That's right,
complicated
more
than
texture.
what it is. But basically, we're just going to take our leather. We've got our 2 strips together,
So you
and
just do an overhand knot.
just an overhand knot.
And you could do this with any width of leather too.
Oh yeah, you can. In fact,
It looks so pretty with the flat.
Well, and the piece I have on is actually a little bit thinner leather as well, so which gives it a little bit more feminine, kind of dainty look. I'm just going to slide my cup chain in my leather knot. I'm just going to tighten that up a little bit.
Okay, so you just want to make sure that it's seated in the knot.
Right.
And then do you also glue this?
And you're going to glue your cup chain into place.
Okay.
Just put a little dab in there just to secure it. And then you just want to make sure that cup chain is in there nice and tight, because then we're going to start braiding.
Okay. Do you
And
want...
if you would be my lovely
Sure, I'll
assistant
hold that
here,
for
I'm
you.
going to let you hold
Well,
that.
it doesn't matter how long the ends are. Well, you're going to attach a clasp, so this is just for effect.
You are, and you can trim them shorter if you want. I like mine a little longer because I like kind of fringy things, and
yeah.
it gives the piece a little bit more movement.
Sure.
And then you're basically just going to start braiding your cup chain into your leather. It's just one of your 3rd strands.
Okay. And it doesn't matter where the cup chain is positioned?
It really doesn't. It doesn't matter whether it's your 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. You're just going to start braiding it in and showing as much of the cup chain, obviously, as you can.
Sure, and I bet you can go back and adjust that a little bit after your
you
braid
definitely
is finished.
can. But the sparkle is what you really, want to
Right.
make sure you've got the
Yeah.
most showing.
And I noticed that you flip this down so that you have the smooth side, but you could get a different effect if you wanted to
You could.
let it twist.
You could, definitely. And as we were talking before, you could do a round leather, you could do any type of materials, really. And get, you could really come up with some
Well, it looks
fabulous
great.
effects.
So when you get to the other end,
When you get to the other end, basically, you're going to do the same thing. You're just going to create a slip knot, keep your crystal tucked into that knot nice and tight, and then we're just going to take a jump ring and attach it through the knot, and this has got a magnetic clasp on it,
okay.
and I'm just going to slip this through my leather.
So you just pass it through the back of the knot.
You just pass it through the back of the knot.
And then it's hidden in your design too.
Right, exactly. And what I love too is having that magnetic clasp. actually it makes it so much easier putting on a bracelet, especially when you have a wrap bracelet.
Oh, sure.
And if you don't have anybody there to help you, it's just so much easier to put on.
Right.
So then we have our fabulous finished wrap
You're
bracelet.
ready to wear. Love it.
Whoops.
Or you could wear it as a necklace.
Yes, you can absolutely wear it as a necklace. And what's fun is you can do a little bit, shorter or longer. It just
Sure.
depends. Like, I like my pieces to kind of fit snug around
Yeah.
my wrist, but you can kind
do
of play
too.
around with different
Yeah.
sizes.
And this
then,
looks so pretty with the dangles on it too.
well, and that's what's fun. So you can further embellish your piece by just wire wrapping simple crystals and just attaching them through the base of your necklace or your bracelet.
Here, I'll give you
It's
this
really
piece
both.
back so you can show. So do you attach it through the cup chain then?
No, actually I attach it onto the
To
leather.
the leather, okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to, I've got my jump ring open here. Just gonna slide it through my leather piece. Feed that crystal on. Close that jump ring back up.
Great, it's so simple.
And we
It's
are
just a
done.
great look. Oh, it's so
Thank
chic.
you.
Thank you, Laura.
Instant gratification.
Yeah, I love it. It's great.
Great.
And that's a wrap for today's show. So please join us next week for solving design problems with our jewelry making experts.
Instructions for today's projects, plus other ideas, techniques, and tutorials are available on the web at beadsbaublesandjewels.com. This is show 1804. If you enjoyed today's show and want to see more projects and great guests, download individual episodes for $2.99 each or order a complete DVD set of the entire Beads, Baubles and Jewels Series 1800 for $29.95 plus shipping and handling at beadsbaublesandjewels.com. Don't miss a single episode. Beads, Baubles and Jewels has been brought to you in part by Beading Daily, your jewelry making resource for how-to projects, books, magazines, DVDs, events, and online learning. BeadingDaily.com. Beadalon, a manufacturer of flexible bead stringing wires, memory wire, artistic wire, stringing materials, innovative findings, and tools to help you fashion your own jewelry. Beadalon.com. Dreamtime Creations, an online supplier of crystals, findings, and jewelry making supplies since 1989. DreamtimeCreations.com. Halcraft, jewelry component manufacturer. Halcraft.com.